Welcome back to Sheboygan Stories on Housed and Unheard. I'm Scott Labonte. The Warming Center here in Sheboygan closed for the season on April 15th. So when our peers left on Thursday morning the 16th, that was it for the season. And I think for a lot of people that feels like a natural transition. Winter's over, warmer weather's coming. But for the people who relied on that space, the reality is a little different. Because when the doors close, the need doesn't. So today I want to talk about what happens next. Not in theory, but in real life. What happens to the people when the place they've been going to stay warm at night isn't there anymore? But first I want to acknowledge something. The Warming Center served an important purpose. It gave people a place to go when the temperatures dropped. A place to get out of the wind, the snow, the freezing cold. And that matters. And for our peers that utilize that space, or any of us that have worked with that population, we appreciate the resource that you provide. We absolutely appreciate the work that you do. It does not go unnoticed. Because without spaces like that, people are at serious risk. So this isn't about criticizing the existence of the Warming Center, not by any means. It's about understanding the reality that comes after. Because for many people, that space became part of their routine, a place they knew that they could go, and now it's gone until next season. So I think one of the biggest gaps in how people understand homelessness is that we tend to think in moments. And I've mentioned this on a few different episodes, if you've listened to any of the previous episodes. We tend to think about the big moments, the ones that really catch our attention, whether it be good, bad, or otherwise. The big moments are the ones that draw attention. We think about winter. We think about emergencies, and we think about when help is available. But we don't always think about what happens in between. And it's those in-between moments, and I've said this before many, many times, it's those in-between moments where the biggest things happen, and those matter. We don't always ask what happens when the help isn't there, or what happens the next night, or even the night after that. The reality is people don't disappear. They go back to where they were before. They go back to tents, possibly cars if they're lucky, couch to couch if you're even luckier. Hidden spaces that most people never see. And some of those places aren't safe. Not physically, not emotionally, and not in any sense of the word. And even though the temperatures are starting to rise, nights still get cold, rain comes, and it sure does. It's been coming sideways lately. The wind doesn't go away, and being outside is still hard. It's still unpredictable, and it's still dangerous in its own ways. And I've talked about this a few times too, talking about trying to sleep outside when it's cold or when it's miserable weather. You're so cold, so wet, so damp, so whatever it may be, that you can't sleep. Your body's shivering, you're cold. You're trying to protect yourself from the elements. You get to the point that your body physically shuts down, that it can no longer stay awake, it can no longer function. So it literally shuts down for about 10 minutes. And yeah, I guess you could technically say that's sleep. It's not a restorative sleep. It's not a beneficial sleep by any means. It doesn't help in any way other than your body just physically shuts down. And then you wake up from that, and it starts the whole cycle all over again. And this is night after night after night. And there's another layer to this. The people who didn't go to the Warming Center, even when it was open. And for whatever reason, they didn't go. Some didn't feel safe. Some struggled with the environment. Some had past experiences that made it difficult to walk through those doors. And when a resource isn't accessible to somebody when it's open, it definitely isn't accessible when it's closed. So those individuals, they've been navigating this reality the entire time. And now more people are joining them in it. So when a space like that closes, people go from having at least one constant, consistent place to go back to full survival mode. Every day becomes about, where am I going to sleep tonight? How do I stay dry? How do I stay safe? Where can I go that I won't be bothered? And that kind of constant stress takes a toll. And these are legitimate concerns that our peers have. And if you're in full survival mode, nothing outside of that survival mode matters. I hear a lot of people talking about, why don't they get a job? Why don't they do this, that, or the other thing, whatever it may be? And those are legit questions. I get that. But at the same time, my response is always, how are you supposed to function or think about anything beyond getting through that night or that day if you're in full survival mode? If you don't know where you're going to sleep, if you don't know if you're going to be safe, or if you don't have a spot that you're not going to be bothered, because that happens a lot too. They end up finding a spot to think they're safe, to think they're comfortable, out of the elements. Lo and behold, some officer or whatever comes and kicks them out, or they're saying, hey, you can't be here. And that's the toll it takes. And it's not just a physical toll. It's a mental toll. It's an emotional toll. And it wears people down. So there's another thing that I've been thinking about a lot. Warming centers are seasonal by design. They open when it's cold enough to be life-threatening, and they close when the weather improves. But homelessness isn't seasonal. The need doesn't disappear in April. It just looks a little different. Less visible, easier to overlook, but still very much there. And that's where the gap is. And that's how anybody that follows us, anybody that followed this, understands that's how Pay It Forward came to be. We saw those gaps. We saw where the people were falling through. And though we didn't have all the answers, and we didn't offer every resource that would solve this or help this, because, I've mentioned before, not any one organization is going to solve homelessness. It takes an entire community. But we saw those gaps. We saw where the people were falling through, and we figured we could jump in and we could help to close some of those gaps, or at least bridge them to get people across. So when we were running Pay It Forward, we saw this cycle every year. Winter would bring more urgency, more attention, more resources, and then spring would come, and things would quiet down. But the people didn't go anywhere. The needs didn't go anywhere. They just became less visible to the average person. And that's something that stuck with me, because it showed how easy it is to respond to a crisis and how much harder it is to stay engaged after this crisis passes. And that again goes back to we see things in moments, the big moments. We overlook the little things or the things in between where the actual progress happens. But this is where community matters. Because when formal resources shift or disappear, community fills the gaps. People checking in on someone, offering a meal, a place to sit for a while, a simple conversation. Small things. But those small things matter. Especially when someone is trying to navigate life without stability. And I've said this before, but I've been seeing a lot more of it lately. That there are people stepping up, people paying attention, people caring, and that gives me hope. When the doors of the warming center close, it doesn't mark the end of anything, it just marks a transition. The shift back into a different kind of reality for the people who are still out there. And maybe the question we should be asking isn't, what do we do in the winter, but what kind of community are we the rest of the year? Think about that. Because the need doesn't come and go with the seasons, and neither should the compassion. Right. So I'm going to keep this one relatively short again today. But I just wanted to put that out there, bring it to light about the realities of what happens next for our peers when the Warming Center closes. And again, Warming Center, thank you for the resource you provide, for the work that you do. We do appreciate that. Thank you for listening to Sheboygan Stories on Housed and Unheard. If this episode meant something to you, I'd encourage you to follow the podcast. And it's on any streaming platform. It's on iHeart, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, you name it, it's out there. Just search up Sheboygan Stories, it's there. Give it a follow and share it with somebody else because these conversations matter. So as always, keep your heart open and pay it forward.